Good evening, KZFR. How's everyone doing tonight? Well, KZFR, or Right on Air, I should say, is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by D.A. Lampe. Lampe Construction, a proud supporter of KZFR and community radio in Northern California. For more information, visit D.A. Lampe Construction at dalampe.com. Well, hey everyone, this is Kevin here with Kylene, and we'll get our mic set up, so go ahead and see if that's working.
Can you hear me?
I can. Perfect.
Cool.
And we have a very special guest today. Before I let him introduce himself, I will go ahead and introduce himself for him, I guess.
Sure.
Way to do it. This
very
is
meta.
Yeah, this is Rob Davidson. Rob Davidson is the author of 3 short story collections, Spectators, Flash Fictions, The Farthest Shore, and Field Observations. He is the author of a monograph, The Master and the Dean, The Literary Criticism of Henry James and William Dean Howells. His fiction, essays, and interviews have appeared in ZYZZYVA.
Ziziva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hayden's Ferry Review, Indiana Review, New Delta Review, South Dakota Review, and elsewhere. Davidson's honors include a Fulbright U.S. Senior Scholarship Award to Taiwan, 2015-16, the Camber Press Fiction Award, judged by Ron Carlson, and an AWP Intro Journals Project Award in Fiction. He teaches creative writing and American literature at CSUC, California State University, Chico, and the book that we're going to be reading from today has been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah. The Five Oaks Press. This is their first book of fiction, I believe. They've been a small press poetry publisher for a few years, and I was just explaining to Kylene at the top of the show, or before the show, that each press can publish, or each press can nominate one book for the Pulitzer, and the Five Oaks did generously nominate my book for a Pulitzer. So keep your fingers crossed, Chico. You never know.
Yeah. Wow.
Stranger things have happened. And, it's an honor to be nominated for a prize like that.
It's an honor to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kylene. I'm really happy to be here. And I've enjoyed your show. Been listening to it for a while now. And it's great to be here on the Zephyr.
Yeah. Well, we have, I think, 4 pieces in total. I believe it was 4 that you had picked from.
Sure, yeah.
And we'll just kind of get right into them. These will be a little bit different. We're not pairing them with music, so we're just going to give you the full kind of...
Just the music of the prose.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So the book is called Spectators, Flash Fictions, and I'll read a piece, and then maybe we can briefly talk a little bit about it, and I can also maybe talk about the form of the flash fiction, because some listeners may not know what is a flash fiction.
Yeah.
But of course, you should always start with an example rather than a theory.
Yes.
So here we go. So here's a piece called Hoover Dam. Everybody knows where that is and what that is. He emerges from the concrete belly of the dam, that black, humid pit, into blinding sunlight. He removes his hard hat, checks his messages. Thumb dances on keyboard, rapidly entering characters. There is no one to talk to about any of this. The pressure he feels, pushing down on him. The futility of pushing back. Deep inside, he feels the ancient turbines turn. He feels the bristling energy, freely shares it with a wife and 3 children. But there are cracks in his foundation. Perhaps it's inevitable. Every dam must fail, because look what it's up against. Water always wins. It just keeps coming, flowing down the canyon, steady and relentless. Many years ago, he built a wall, made it as thick as he could. But anything can be worn down with time. Now he feels it, the dampness seeping in, eroding his foundation. There was a day, not long ago, when the first chunk crumbled off. Now it's a small hole. Water works that scar, soaking and lapping, licking and stroking, probing with its wet tongue. He presses send, texting himself. Now is the end of the beginning of the end.
Whew.
That's it.
Oh, man. Kelly smiling over there.
Yeah, that was good. I like that ending.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's a flash fiction. So, I guess the simplest definition of a flash fiction is just a really short story. And the stories in this book most of them are well under a page long. They're more like prose poems. They're very short. And I came around to write this book after I'd written these first 2 books of short stories, which have more, kind of full-length traditional short stories, realist, character-driven stories, and so on, which I love. I love that form. I love that, genre. I've worked really hard to produce that work, but I kind of felt like I needed to face a new challenge when I finished my second book, The Farther Shore. And I wanted to write something. I've always admired these really short stories, and I thought I'll just write these really, really condensed, crystallized, focused pieces, and try as best as I can to get away from narrative, get away from plot, and just focus on language, and maybe more of a lyric impulse. Like a lyric poem, right, is all about the subjectivity of the speaker, the kind of emotional space. And I just thought, I'll just take in these cases there were images, and I'll focus on the image that I'm responding to, and I'll just try to inhabit that space. So it was, for me as a writer, it was a really exciting book because it was new territory. I hadn't written like this before, and I just had a whole new challenge. Nothing over a page. That was my rule. Just like sit down every day, write a new piece, nothing over a page. And what do you know? After a little while, you come up with you realize you got a book manuscript on your hand.
That's fantastic.
So the other thing that readers or listeners might be interested to know is that most of this book is, we use a fancy Greek term, ekphrastic, which means that it's art created in response to other art. And most of the pieces in this book were written in response to photographs. So the cover of the book is a guy standing in front of the Grand Canyon with a video camera videoing the Grand Canyon, right? Spectators. And this is a photo by Tom Patton, a photographer whose work I really admire. He is a professor in the art department at Chico State. And the genesis moment for this book was when one of my colleagues in the English department, Sarah Pape, coordinated a show at the 1078 Gallery. One of in my personal opinion, the best art gallery in Chico, also the best art gallery that doesn't have a location for a gallery in Chico at the moment, but that's going to change. Go 1078. But Sarah put together a show where she asked writers to collaborate with visual artists, text and image, and she very wisely paired me up with Tom Patton. And when I knew Tom and I have known each other for years, but I sat down and I looked through some of his work, and I picked out this series that he had been working on. The name of his series is The Spectacle of the Ordinary Spectator. So what Tom does is he doesn't take pictures of the Grand Canyon per se. He takes pictures of like people taking pictures of the Grand Canyon. Or he goes to Notre Dame Cathedral and he takes pictures of people in front of, So he's really interested in how the tourist, or the idea of the spectacle. What is a spectacle? It's like this thing you're supposed to revere the Notre Dame Cathedral when you stand in front of it. But how many people really even know anything about it? Right? You're just like, oh, I'm here, right? But there's this whole idea. It's like if you've ever read, one of my favorite novels is White Noise by Don DeLillo, right? And one of the chapters in that is the most photographed barn in America. And everybody drives to this barn to take pictures of the barn. And one day this guy goes out there, he's like, this isn't really that great of a barn. Why is everybody taking pictures? And the other guy's like, no, you don't get it. It's not, the barn has nothing to do with it. It's the idea of taking a picture of the barn. That's what people are into. So it's this idea of like a consumer commodity. It's like this culture where we get obsessed with the idea of an image or the idea of a thing rather than the authentic knowledge of that thing. So Tom's pictures really capture that, because I love this cover. I wish we're on radio, so obviously you can only use the...
it's on my Facebook, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, I posted
thank
a picture
you.
Holding it so that people can
Awesome.
enjoy it. Yes.
Yeah, or if you go to my website, self-plug, warning, robdavidsonauthor.net, you'll see the cover, and it's great. It's this amazing picture. So Tom's series, to come back to the origins of the inspiration for this book, I wrote a small number, like maybe 4 or 5 pieces in response to Tom's photographs. We did this gallery show. Tom and I really liked it. We thought it went really well. So we decided to keep working, and I wrote 40 flash fictions and paired them with 40 of his shows. And that ended up as a show at the Eureka at the Morris Graves Art Museum in Eureka last December and January. We had a whole gallery show where his photos were on the wall and my fictions were, on like broadsides next to it. It was totally great. And it was just so amazing because I'm, like as a writer, usually you're kind of like a lone wolf, you're just doing your thing, off in your studio or whatever, and just kind of all by yourself. So this project was great also in the sense that it was more of like me. I wasn't collaborating with Tom in the sense of he wasn't taking pictures in response to what I was writing, but we were in a dialogue. And the gallery show is a good example of how he picked certain pieces to show because of what I'd written about them. And the gallery show probably had 20 or 25 pieces, so not the whole set. But anyway, that was the start of this book. And so it was different for me in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Process, genre, end product.
Yeah.
Everything.
And they're so concise too. They evoke because you said you focused on like imagery and focused on really just consolidating down to one page. So it's almost like flipping through a picture book, but you're reading it.
Yeah, good. That sounds like you read it in the spirit that I intended it. Yeah, good. That's it. It should be image driven, more. I hope, right? Something that's more intuitive for a reader rather than sort of explicit. Like a story has to have causal order. A full-length story has to have a kind of causal order to it, which is the kind of logic I get. I understand that really well. But it can also be a kind of prison.
Yes. Yes. It's funny because I always push against abstract, and they always argue with me. They're like, oh, well, people need to make their own. I didn't mean to use that type of voice, but, people like to choose their way of seeing things. And what I really love about your work is you give us a lot of concrete images, but it's still open to interpretation. When we're talking about the guy at Hoover Dam, what is, when we talk about his cracks in his foundation, and his ancient turbines. These images, we see them very, very clearly, but then there's something about them that now becomes spiritual, where they're within this man. I don't know. To me, I love that I can see it and I can feel it, not because I know what he's going through, but because of the way it's worded. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think we're probably on the same page there. These should be pieces that are suggestive. And if you're going to write something this short, you're not going to do what you would do in a full-length story and get into the backstory and kind of sketch out the psychological history of a character and why he or she has done this or that. In this piece, in a piece like this, you're going to be more you're going to gesture towards something, and then the reader's going to step in and fill in the blank a little bit.
I feel like it does a really good job of a backstory without putting a backstory. We know that there's a wife. We know there's 3 kids. We know there's something with him. We know his job. We know where he's at. We almost kind of know his mindset. Now is the end of the beginning of the end. I felt I got so much out of all that little bit, and almost it didn't have to be said directly. Like the indirectness is what actually helped me go through and feel what I felt with this character.
And the best part... Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to say thanks. I mean, it's like the governing metaphor of that piece is barriers, obviously.
Yes.
Like the idea... Or retention, right? The idea of a dam... Like the other reason I wanted to read that is because, of course, everybody's been thinking about water and, Oroville Dam and stuff.
I knew that's why you did that. I was like...
It's kind of on our collective community mindset right now. It
would have had a total different meaning if it was titled Oroville Dam.
Yeah, I wrote the piece well in advance of those recent events. But, we're all kind of thinking about that, right? And hoping that dam stays where it is.
Someone made a joke. They're like, all the water that's in the dam, too bad they can't just take that and put that on the fire.
Yeah.
Poor Oroville. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Kevin?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, too, I like the ambiguity, and especially for this one, because you give us enough details for us to infer, but what's really interesting about this piece is you can infer positive or negative on it very explicitly, because you could see it maybe as like a pent-up, like a barrier, you said, or a release, like things are breaking down, like is he transitioning to a new job, is there something changing? And so when I read that, I saw like both paths, but there wasn't enough there for me to go down either one, but I could choose mentally which one I wanted to go down, which is the same as looking at a picture. You can see someone standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and go, are they documenting something for like a science thing, or are they there with their family? Like what is this? So it's just enough to make you like really question all of it, but you can't go any further because it's just that little flash fiction. It's just a slice, and it's so I love this genre.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's you've just kind of stated or defined ambivalence, which is kind of what that piece is all about.
Yeah.
So great. You want me to read another?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll read a piece called Sky Glider, and the subtitle is Above the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. So I'm sure many listeners have been to Santa Cruz, and you know how they have that sort of gondola chair that goes across the boardwalk in a big loop, and you just kind of ride it, and you can look at the ocean, you can look at people riding the roller coaster or whatever. So one of Tom Patton's images was this fellow sitting on the Sky Glider, and he just kind of had this morose look on his face. And I thought, man, I've been on that Sky Glider many times, and I love it, but the guy didn't look like he was too pleased. So I just started playing around, and this is what I came up with, Sky Glider, which is the name of the ride. Sky Glider floats above the crowd, hovers over and above the crowd, a spectacle to behold. Behold a dream of elevation. Behold a dream of escape. Escape all attention, dispense no favors, judge none other than one's self. Self-interested and sublime, Sky Glider is a perfect fiction, a willing, milling, million people's dream. Dream of purpose, dream of goals, dream of reason to be in this world, having created it. It appears there's nothing to do but ride around this world in circles, ignoring countless pleas for intervention. He's indifferent. For a miracle, he's powerless. For hope, he's hopeless. Helpless is Sky Glider, hovering above this world of goals and outcomes, predictions and rewards. Reword the litany of the log flume, chant down the ceremony of the tilt-a-whirl, upend the blessing of the bumper cars. Cars he rides in endless circles, first this way, then that. That he hovers above the milling millions he created means nothing. Nothing but why? Why, asks he who hates the world he created because he is not, can never be part of it. It pains him to wonder who made him, why they took the trouble to make Sky Glider.
I love it. I love the rhyming. The willing, milling, million people dreams. I like because you're going to have to slow down to say that, which means that's a thought that you have to kind of meditate on. I really enjoy that part.
Yeah, good. That was a piece that was, in my mind, when I was writing it, I was thinking mostly about rhythm, the musicality of the language.
Very lyrical.
Yeah,
very
you've got
much.
Obviously all these repetitions of words that are, either literally repeated or sort of half rhymes that get played with, and so it was fun to write because in a way I kind of quit thinking about meaning first and just thought more about music. And of course there is some meaning there, but mostly it was just playing around with rhythm and sound and wanting, more like you would in a poem where you'd really pay attention to each line, and if it's a metered poem or something like that where you have a certain cadence, and that's what I was going for in that piece.
I love the intention. You can feel the intention. It's not like overdone. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can feel it in the beat, in the rhythm. And I don't know if it's just the way you read. I love the way you read your work. I love your pauses.
Oh, thank you.
The blessing of the bumper cars. Cars he rides in endless circles. First this way, then that. You can actually feel the sway.
Yeah, good. That's it. That's what I was hoping for, right? And this idea of the Sky Glider is literally this loop, right? It's just like an oval loop, and if you were this poor guy, you'd just be riding a loop. Maybe that's all we are doing, right, in life, is kind of riding a loop of one sort or another. And you have to figure out what you're supposed to do while you're riding the car.
That's what I feel. This is so. I love that, and I think with the repetition, it almost feels like you kept going. When you're on a ride and you go in circles, you go by the same plank or the same thing, and every time you see it, you're like, and that's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Sky Glider, and let's see. Well, Virginia Steppe. So I mentioned that I had written a lot of these pieces in response to art. There were other artists who I responded to. I had done a workshop at the Red Bluff Art Gallery up in Red Bluff. Phil Dinan has a great workshop up there, a great art gallery up there, and he does some workshops. And I did a workshop up there where we were working in response to an artist whose work is really quite interesting. Her name is Sarah Umamoto, and she does these kind of hybrid digital. They're photographs, but then they're modified, with digital art, and they become these really I encourage people to look her up, Sarah Umamoto.
How do you spell her last name?
Umemoto, Sarah Umamoto. So one of her images inspired this piece, which was the images of a woman kind of walking on a stream bed underwater. And I thought of Virginia Woolf because I love Virginia Woolf's writing, but sadly she committed suicide by putting rocks in her pocket and walking into a creek and drowning. So this piece was inspired by, the image I saw, but also my curiosity about Virginia Woolf and her sad end. So this piece is called Virginia Steps into Her Stream. Virginia steps into her stream only to find another road. Its stones a glossy ribbon moving downstream, the direction of water always so sure. She walks underwater, the shorelines blurry with autumn's auburn brush. The important thing always is to look good when you're drowning. A snail, late of Kew Gardens, turns away, glued to his stick, blithely slurping the invertebrate he's always been. You can't really blame him, slobbering along in a daze, leaving his sticky trail. He carries that absurd shell, history of burdens unshakable, whirling up to its one fine point. To remove it, not that he ever would expose him for what he is, naked, writhing, glistening in his own juices. Virginia, carried by other currents, turns her back on him.
That's awesome. I like you have this part where it says autumn's auburn brush. It sounds like footsteps, like the steps you would take to get into it. Yeah, and then the first poem I think you read. There's like a certain level of sexuality that you put in there. I don't think it's intended, but the words that are used, writhing, glistening in his own juices. There's something. I don't know why I enjoy that subtlety.
You're not the first person who's said that. I mean, sexual. Okay, to me, it's more sensual.
Sensual. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking definitely for a visceral reaction. I want something that's tactile.
Raw.
Intimate, which could. It could be...
I think that's the word, intimate and sensual. There's something about it that it's not in your face, but if you kind of look into it again, you go, oh, I feel that feeling. There's something about those words that you put together very subtly.
And I like any writer, you have a very certain number of tricks in your toolbox or whatever. And one of them, of course, is always the well-selected detail. If you can get a detail on the page... It could be an image, it could be a sensation, a feeling, and if you can make it so that it kind of cuts through, and connects to that reader like you're talking about, then the piece has a much stronger sense of itself and a better chance of succeeding because you've made a connection, which could be interpreted, different ways. But the point is to make that connection. Writing that fails to do that is usually writing that we don't come back to or remember or doesn't hit us that way. So that is, thank you. That is what I was going for. Something in each piece that would hopefully grab a reader and say, listen to me.
It's kind of cool. I like how you have, if I imagine it as a camera, we've got Virginia Woolf and our focus is on her. And then it zooms in on this snail and his life, in which I think there's a correlation between the snail and Virginia Woolf. I could be wrong. Tell me.
Yeah, well, no, I think there's a connection there. I was thinking of, first of all, the image that I was responding to was this image by Sarah Umamoto. So there literally was a snail in the image. But then also, Virginia Woolf wrote a really wonderful, strange short story called Kew Gardens, in which the point of view shifts between it's something like 6 different characters. And one of the characters that she inhabits the mindset of is literally a snail.
Oh.
It's really a weird story, very experimental. So I'm also alluding. So this piece, I wanted to read this because it's not just in response to Sarah Umamoto, but also, if you know the Kew Gardens story by Virginia Woolf, you'll know what I'm alluding to, which is probably not every reader, but that's okay. It doesn't matter if you get it or not. So there is there's a very distinct Virginia Woolf connection. And I've always when I think of that story, right, I always think of the snail.
Yeah.
Also the gutsy. I'm like, Virginia Woolf, go there. Like, write a story. From a snail's point of view. Like, how does the snail view the world, right? Weird, right? It's so interesting to me. So I love her work for any number of reasons, but not the least of which is that she just took some weird experimental risks in some of her work, right? You know, if you've read a book like To the Lighthouse, you know, there's like one chapter where chronologically it takes about 10 minutes or something, but it takes 50 pages to read because she slows time down to this incredibly, you know, slow pace, just kind of a modernist trick of messing around. So
I feel like you do that with your work too, in moments where, again, I feel we slowed down to the snail and then came back to Virginia. I thought that was a really cool move.
Yeah, thanks. So, again, the book is Spectators Flash Fictions, and my name is Rob Davidson. Hey, Brenton. Our friend Brenton is out there. And anybody who's interested, you know, the book is available on Amazon, or you can go to the Five Oaks Press website, and you can look for the book there if you're interested.
I'll include links, if I can, on my Instagram if you want to get there.
Oh, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. And also, just for, you know, local folks who might be listening, especially on kzfr.org, I'll be reading tomorrow night in Sacramento at the Book Collector on 24th Street at 7:30 p.m. So anyone in Sac, please come out. I'll be happy to sign a book for you. And I'll be in Mendocino on Saturday signing books from 11 to 1 at the Gallery Bookshop, great bookshop in Mendocino. So anybody listening online in the Northern California region, I'd love to meet you and see you. And I'll be doing, you can go to my website. I've got lots of readings and events coming up, robdavidsonauthor.net.
Yeah. And if you missed it too, this is actually a part 1 of a part 2 thing we got going on, so you'll be on again. Yeah, surprise. So I think we're actually wrapping up. I wanted to really thank you for coming on the show. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kylene, and thank you to KZFR. It's so great to have community radio and have a show like this that, you know, focuses on writing, writers, and literature. So thanks a lot. I'll see you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.